Good morning, writers. Today on Get Them Words In, I want to talk about word blindness. This is something that writers get introduced to the first time they try to edit their work. And it's something that is really frustrating in the modern era. What I'm talking about is when you write the wrong word down, but it is a correct word. So a great example of this is the difference between here, H-E-R-E, and here, H-E-A-R. If you mess those up, it changes the entire context of the sentence and often makes it make no sense. Another good one that I'm really not fond of, but I do a lot is from and form. Those are two exact, like, proper words with the exact same letters, and they tend to get switched up if you type too fast. You don't really have this problem when you're like writing with like a pen and paper, and maybe that's why some of the greats do it. I know Neil Gaiman still writes all his books by hand in first draft, and then they're transposed afterwards and whatnot. But I think that there's a big difference for modern writers because like the tactileness of knowing what a letter is supposed to look like, and then basically augmenting your finger to make that letter in a shape. Like, let's say if you're making an A, like I just did. The tactileness in doing that, it's very hard to accidentally write a B if you want to write an A, because it's your body trying to do the thing that you know how to do. But the keyboard is delightfully agnostic about that. It does not care if your hand slipped and instead of hitting an A, you hit an S. It is going to type the wrong thing. And because of how complicated the English language is, you end up with words that are of the same letters, and your fingers do exactly what you've asked them to do and hit those letters to make up the word, but they don't do them in the right order, and you end up with form instead of from. This is tricky. This is something that is horrible, and it's happened to me. I was reading audiobook chapters of my last book, and I misused the word here, and it's just so frustrating because you go over a manuscript so many times, and you think you've got them all, but you don't. So a couple things that I've done since writing this book that I've tried to do to help me catch those things and to polish my work before I handed it off to editors, before I handed it off to beta readers, that kind of stuff. Because you know, the simple truth is readers will ignore stuff too. You'll read a section and your brain will go, that's a proper word, and ignore the fact that it was the wrong word used unless you're actually like scanning each sentence and really looking at them, and it's very mentally taxing and takes a lot of time, and you don't want to take time away from your writing. And readers do the same thing. They'll be like, oh, he probably meant from there, not form, and just ignore it, and it's just a passing thought, and they get back into the prose and stuff. But a lot of them will stack up, and then you have a problem with your writing. So some of the strategies I have: one, turn off autocorrect. This is a bane of modern writers, and I really do mean it. Autocorrect is kind of the first step to, you know, robots writing your books for you. And that sounds kind of conspiratorial and stuff. We'll do an episode on AI later. But yeah, it's the first step of you not writing is autocorrect. That's the machine writing. That's not you writing. You need to make sure that you're putting the words that you want down, and that you're not conceding suggestions for words to anybody else. You're the writer of your stories. Make sure you're the one who's in charge of where words go. Don't leave that up to a computer. Don't leave that up to, you know, other people. You're the writer. Take criticism, of course, but you're the writer. So make sure you're the one putting the words in. And that might mean switching back to pen and paper so that you can make sure that the words are going in the way they are. But if you're typing on a computer, what you're going to need to do is turn off autocorrect so that you don't have words being autocorrected the way a robot thinks that you should be writing the sentence, and that you're actually using the words that you want to put down. Second thing is you should be keeping a list of the ones you find. The reason why I know form is one that I always do is because I find it all the time in my work. Anytime I use from, my hands just, you know, miss up the letters, and I don't want autocorrect correcting that, because sometimes I'm going to want to use form and then it'll get trained not to use form. So keep a list of the ones you do. So like form here, one for me, because I write YA, is principle, because there's like the principle of the thing and the principle of the high school, and those are different things and they're spelled differently, and they just sneak up on you. And that kind of word blindness where you've you just read it so much that you just skip over the things that you've written, you're going to miss those things. So keeping a list of your mistakes is something that it's not natural to do for a writer. You're going to want to just fix your mistakes, and that's not good for you. What you want to do is keep track of your mistakes, because you're going to make them again and you're going to miss them. So having just a shorthand list, and mine's about 20 words long. I keep it in my commonplace book. I'll just toss it out. I keep it in here, which is by my desk when I'm doing that, and I do a search function through the Word document, which you can do in any of the word processors that most people use, especially with Word. The Word search function is actually really nice to work with. You can look for that stuff. You can look for those words. You can double check all your yours. That's another one. It's like, people can misuse your when they're supposed to be you, saying your, like you are. And they can mess that up, and it looks right. And if the grammar catcher doesn't get it, then it's going to be like an entirely different meaning sentence. So keeping a short list of those words that you can search, that is tantamount to being able to do this and to make sure that you're compensating for your word blindness. There's always going to be stuff that you need to check. Along with that is keeping a list of misspelled versions of your proper nouns. If you have, especially as like a fantasy author, if you have weird names, they're always going to show up kind of wrong. And so if you correct that and say, no, this is a proper noun into your word processor's dictionary, well, now misspellings can show up as proper nouns too. So what you want to do is keep track of how you misspell things. A great thing to do is to wait until you're done your first draft and do no editing until you get to your first draft of the thing, and then go back and record all the really kind of glaringly obvious like spelling mistakes that show up, red squiggly lines. Record those on that list, and then double check those words when you're doing your search spell check or your search word check at the end of your manuscript. That's going to let you know if you're missing stuff that maybe the editor's not keeping up with. These documents can get really long. And so it's hard for the spell checker to completely check everything and then go back to the beginning. And sometimes it's still checking while you're thinking something's complete. And you don't see any red squiggly lines, so you're not going to correct anything. But really, the spell checker just hasn't caught up to page 400 of your epic fantasy. It's a good argument for doing chapters as separate documents, but I can't. My brain doesn't work that way. One of the reasons why I write shorter works too. So these are strategies that you can use. You can use the search function. You can use a list of your most commonly misused words. You can also find these lists online and then just plunk through them. Something I found is considering when you're done your manuscript, it's always good to let it sit for a bit, like, let's say, a month while you're figuring out what you want to do with it, just so that you're fresh eyes to it, and to then start doing this stuff afterwards, and just take a week and spend some hard time polishing that manuscript. This is going to be a future product that you're going to try and sell. This is going to be a story that you want people to enjoy. You need to take time polishing that stone so that it looks pretty at the back end of it. So that's what I do. I take a week. So 5 business days, Monday through Friday, once I have my manuscript. And on Monday, I will do all my searches. I will spend, the better part of the day, or my writing time normally, and I'll sacrifice my writing goals for that day, and for that week rather. And I'll look for all those things on the one day. And then I'll usually use a text to voice app so that it reads it back to me. That's another great thing. That does not replace you having to read your own work. You should be reading out loud your own work, and it pays to record that too, so that you can hear yourself reading it and see if it sounds natural. The only reason I caught the here that was misplaced in this book is because I was doing the audiobook chapters, and then I realized mid-sentence that it was the wrong word. I think I might even mention it in the video. So those are just some strategies. There's a ton more. We'll probably do another video about this later on, but I just wanted to share you guys the concept of being word blind and some strategies on how to avoid that in your own writing. Hope you guys are getting those words in, and we will talk to you later.